Today's topic is going to be on who is the best and worst drummers in the world. And I made that post last night about what I was talking about this morning, and I think it raised a few eyebrows. Just saying the word worst, or I could have said suckiest, or not very good. But it was suggested to me to talk about like the most influential drummers, maybe um, your favorite or least favorite. We were dancing around the word worst, and I do have a plan in place, I think, to discuss this sensitive issue. So that's what it's going to be about. But goofy holidays. I'm not sure if this holiday is goofy necessarily, but it was a thing to celebrate on 12/10. And today, strap yourself in, people. Are you prepared for this? Today is Festival for the Souls of Dead Whales Day. I'll repeat that. Today is Festival of Souls for Dead Whales Day. I didn't make it up. I didn't make it up. I read it off of Google. Blame Google. Or celebrate. I don't, whatever you want to do. It's totally cool. If for some reason you have some special moment today where you're celebrating the Festival of Souls for Dead Whales today, then by all means, please share. The producer is here. Oh, today is my whack job mother-in-law's birthday. I could say whack job mother-in-law knowing that she most likely will never say that. Or if she heard me say it, she'd probably say, what? But the producer's mom, her birthday is today. She is 84, I believe. I'm pretty sure that's the case. She's 84, and she is a very sweet lady. And I'm her favorite son-in-law. I just want to make that perfectly clear. I'm also the only son-in-law, which makes it easy for me to be the favorite. But I'm the favorite. I'm the greatest. I'm the best. I'm the best son-in-law in her world. And who could blame her, right? Who could blame her? So, yes, it is Babs's birthday. Her name is Barbara Nicholson. We call her Babs. I call her Babs. A lot of people call her Babs. Babs, of course, being short for Barbara. So, happy birthday to her. And then tomorrow will be my dad's birthday, and he will be 73. Yeah. My parents are young people. The nasty word of worst. Who's the worst drummer? Who's the best drummer? You know, it all is going to boil down to a matter of opinion. That's a almost like an obvious thing to say, that it comes down to a matter of opinion on who's the best and who's not the best. Like, how gently can we say you're not the best drummer? Do you want to be the best drummer? I want to be the best Fred Fisher drummer that there is, but I'll never achieve some of those things that it takes to be in the circle of like Jeff Porcaro or Steve Smith or Simon Phillips. Who else can pop in my head immediately here? Those kind of drummers, I think, are just several notches. They're top shelf drummers. They're way up there. Your J.R. Robinsons, things like that. As I've gotten a little older, my awareness of drummers out there has never really changed. It's been a very narrow view of drummers that I listen to and like. Now, take my buddy James Harrison, for example. He seems to be extremely well educated on the who's who of drummers, hence his videos on drumming influences of the day, which are Dennis Chambers. Yes, he's another one. Thank you, Kyle. James has this vast knowledge of drummers of all styles, and it's really, really cool. And I feel like in a lot of ways I've missed out on the exposure to some of these drummers. Well, Fred, could you start doing a deep dive into these other drummers? Yes, I could, but oddly enough, I'm also short on time because I'm really busy just doing what I do, teaching and being involved in music in different ways than when I was younger, when I could afford to listen for hours on end to music. I really miss that part of my of my life. Really, is just being able to be left alone to listen to music. Anymore, it seems like if I want to listen to music, I have to have earbuds in. Excuse me. I have to have earbuds in. And can I be in a place where I can listen through a whole song without any interruption? Because, well, for example, yesterday I had a couple things sent to me that I wanted to listen to, and wouldn't you know it, the moment I put earbuds in, I'm getting tapped on the shoulder. Dad, can you help me decorate the tree? So wouldn't help Jude get set up to decorate the tree. Just things like that. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that my ability and my time to actually just listen to music is pretty limited. And when I do, I tend to gravitate towards the stuff I love. I don't give old music that has awesome drummers much of a chance, and I don't give new music who possibly has great drummers a chance. I just it's a time issue for me. But I had a handful of things that were discussed over the last couple weeks, and some stuff yesterday even that kind of got me thinking about who's the best drummer out there. And then I frequently ask people, hey, if you have something you want me to talk about, to put it in the comments or message me. Well, somebody had messaged me like, who's the who's the greatest drummers in the world, and then versus who are drummers who get scrutinized, and why. Well, in the climate that we live in right now with social media, and anybody can put videos of themselves playing, from these well-respected drummers that I mentioned earlier to people who don't have a career in music but maybe are fantastic drummers who are posting things. So how we discover not just drummers but music and musicians. Of course, being a drummer, I'm going to pay more attention to that, and people send me stuff all the time. Our exposure and the ability to expose ourselves to the world it's way easier than it's ever have been. Let's see. I don't want to fall behind on these comments because one thing I like about this is trying to keep everything very interactive. So Chris said, I have to get to work, so I'll put in my vote. Fine, Chris. Put in your vote and then bail. Chris says, love Greg Bissonette. He's got the chops, sure, but seems like a really good guy, can play any style, and gets to play with Ringo. Yeah, Greg is awesome, and he's got an awesome resume. You just look at his body of work, and of course, he's got to be talented, and he's got to be a great hang. Good morning, Greg. Kirby, it's a constant strive for perfection. The best is Mark Portnoy. I think you said Mark Portnoy, but his name's not Mark. It's Mike. Maybe that was just a typo. But as soon as you said Mark, I could not get Mike to go in my head. Mike Portnoy. Yes. And Neil Peart around here. It's Troy Nichols, you. I think he meant you as in me, and then John Heineman. Yeah, Troy's awesome. Heineman's awesome as well. Are you standing good? Are you standing good for you, Fred? Yes, I am standing okay. I do get very tired though, and I can start drumming with my right leg. Yes, Kirby. I think you meant Mike Portnoy. But yes, thank you for including me in that list. That was awesome of you. So I get students that ask me frequently who I think is the best drummer in the world. Well, because I think they're the best drummer in the world doesn't mean that they are the best drummer in the world. They've just influenced my life in a way um, where not only did I respect their playing, but they influenced me and they inspired me to drum. And so uh, I always tell people I was a really late bloomer in the world of rock music. Um, I grew up in a Christian home, and I still believe all of that. So I never really get into too much of that on social media because to me it's kind of like politics. But it's an important part of my story. So when I was younger, we grew up in a Southern Baptist church, so extremely conservative. So my music exposure at the time was hymns from the church hymnal and singing in church and that kind of thing. And I remember that my mom liked this group called Dallas Home and Praise. Now I didn't look up where they came from, but that was the music I was really exposed to. And then sometimes in the car, my dad would listen to Neil Diamond, which I thought was awesome too. And to me, it was a lot different. So, yes, Kenny Aronoff for sure. I'm going to talk about Kenny specifically here in a moment. And Kyle says his favorites are Phil Collins, yeah, Chester Thompson, Phil Earhart from Kansas, Gavin Harrison, and Karen Carpenter. Karen Carpenter, yes. And she's one I think that gets overlooked. She's a great drummer, but obviously captivating voice for sure. Whenever man, I'm sorry, I got the gurgly throat. Her singing is hypnotic to me. It's hypnotic. Oh boy, here we go. Dr. Daniel Glass is my vote for one of the most technically brilliant drummers that I have encountered. Caesar from Golden Earring is terrifyingly good, especially for his advanced age. Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with any of that, Greg. Great suggestions. Okay, going back to Dallas Home and Praise. So that was the music I listened to at home. And I don't even remember if they had drums. It was piano for sure and like four-part vocals. Um, it wasn't until I was taking private drum lessons and one of my teachers, so I had to be an early teen, exposed me to the band Dokken. uh, I laugh not because I think that's silly, but it wasn't the typical exposure to like a Ringo Starr or John Bonham or something like that. It was Mick Brown, Wild Mick Brown. And when I heard that music, it was really exciting, and especially the song that was on their first album. It was called "Paris Is Burning," and it was a live recording. And so you would hear the roar of the crowd, and you would hear the band play, and I would just picture in my mind this big stage and lighting rig and all of that stuff, and just that excitement. So I wanted to live in that world. I wanted to live in that world. So that for me was like my jumping off point. Was my drum teacher exposing me to the band Dokken. Um, and with my own students, sometimes I have students come in and they're exposing me to new music still, which is really cool. So that to me was my thing. And then of course I discovered Rush when I heard Tom Sawyer on the radio, and then I was a diehard Neil Peart fan, and I would try my best to learn how to play Rush songs according to what I was interpreting, what I was hearing while I was drumming. And to this day, Neil is still a drummer that's a highly regarded drummer. But then you would have critics today that come out of the woodwork and criticize Neil Peart and tell people about how crummy of a drummer he is. Or he's just awful and he has no feel and this and that and the other. And then so these people make these claims, and then you're like, so just out of curiosity, you go and look at their page, and there's nothing of them playing drums, but they don't have a problem sharing their opinion, or even to tell you how great they think they are. So that's another whole deal. So I was talking to my son Christian yesterday, who is currently in Denver playing snare drum with the Blue Knights indoor percussion group. And when I called him, I think I woke him up, but I asked him how things were going, and he said things were going great, and he was feeling really challenged musically and physically for what they're doing. And it's the hardest music he's ever played. It's the most exciting music he's ever played. And he really was excited because everybody in the organization is 100% in to what they're doing. So they're working really, really hard. And so one thing I talked to Christian about was that the instrument that we all love and that we're playing continues to evolve, and with social media and YouTube and things like that, it seems like it's evolving at a rapid rate. You've got drummers who are playing faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. And remember 10 years ago, the big rage was gospel chop drumming, and that just exploded and took off like crazy. And then people playing faster and faster, like I just said. And then not only that, but the drummers are younger and younger that are doing these things. They're doing things that are out of this world crazy. We didn't have that kind of exposure when I was younger. There weren't people doing that, at least not to my knowledge. Not in my world, that wasn't happening, right? Greg says Ray Luzier. Yes, currently Ray is one of my top favorite drummers for many for many reasons. Yeah, he's super great. So coming back to Kenny Aronoff. Kenny Aronoff is a drummer that's really been inspiring me over the last few years. A lot of it is his attitude and his sheer will and determination to try to be the best drummer that he can be. And he kind of makes a football reference where he wants to make a touchdown every time that he plays, knowing that he's not always going to make a touchdown, but his goal is to make a touchdown. That's how hard he's working and how hard he's striving to be the best at what he does. Kenny Aronoff has never made the claim that I'm aware of where he said, I'm the best drummer in the world. No, he's trying to be the best him that he can be all the time. And that's really inspiring. And then, I mean, he's got like this whole step program. If you go watch him, he's got 8 or 9 steps like for health and for being a better drummer and things like that. It's really great. So part of Kenny's story, and Kenny is, I had to look up, Kenny is currently 71 years old. He looks like he's 40, maybe late 30s. So he's really in shape, monster drummer, and he's played with you name him. He's probably played on their record. Just a highly sought after session drummer and live performing drummer. So part of Kenny's story is that he'll say when he was 10 years old that his mother called him and his brother. So I have my language proper, into the house to watch the Ed Sullivan Show because the Beatles were on. And so Kenny is 10. So I would say that any drummer, most of those drummers that are like really incredible drummers like Kenny who are at that age, I would say between like the age of 65 and 80, let's say, when they're being interviewed and talk to people, they'll say like, who was the drummer that really influenced you, that made you want to do this? And a lot of times that first answer is Ringo Starr, because they saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, and this was a new thing. So I I wanted to find out. So that was in February of 1964, February 9th of 1964, when the Beatles were on the Ed Sullivan Show. So and at the time when that aired, they had 73 million viewers that watched that show. So think about 73 million people watching the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show in the year of 1964. And so I was like, okay, TV came out in the 1920s. So if you take 20 away from 64, that's basically only 40 years that TV had been around. So TV came out in 1920, but it was not a common household item until after World War II. So when was World War II over? Like 45, 1945, 46? I don't remember for sure. So you're talking about basically just shy of 20 years from the end of World War II until the Beatles were on that show. And so TV was still a relatively new thing or a common item for people to have in their house. So reaching 73 million people, and the influence that Ringo Starr had on people who wanted to become drummers. Now, in the circles of social media, you see people just ripping Ringo Starr apart. He's a terrible drummer. He's the worst drummer out there. I've seen that in the last week of somebody commenting that Ringo Starr is the worst drummer of all time. I highly disagree with that. But they're also looking at that with a different lens, an incorrect lens, if I may. But like I said a few moments ago, this instrument has been taking further and further and further and further, and just stretching the boundaries of what's possible to do on the drums. So you got your Mike Portnoys, and you got your Neil Pearts, and you got your Mike Manginis, your Terry Bozio's, things like that, that have just stretched drumming beyond what we thought was possible. Danny Carey's of the world and things like that. And so people will make those comparisons, like Danny Carey is the best drummer in the entire world. He is way better than Ringo Starr. Well, you know what? Danny Carey wasn't influencing 73 million people in 1964. And the other thing is, there's a major creative element to all of this by having the right people in your band at the right time to make things happen. I highly doubt if that the Beatles had a different drummer than Ringo, would they have had the success that they have had? I highly doubt it. Ringo was a key component in that. Everybody's going to point to John Lennon and Paul McCartney probably first. But Ringo was the guy. And on top of it, you could see people saying he was a hack at best and not very good, and I could play those songs better than Ringo. I always shake my head when I see comments like that. It's easy to criticize somebody else's creativity and think, well, if I was in the drummer's seat, I would have played this or I would have played that. Well, you weren't and you didn't. Ringo did. So say what you want about Ringo, but he was such a key component at that time to influence a lot of the drummers that we highly regard today, like Kenny Aronoff. Let's catch up here really quick because I'm going to talk about Kiss. So, I mentioned the best and the worst drummers of the world. you slide in the word worst, and then that catches people's attention. Like, oh, what kind of controversial thing is gonna transpire out of saying who's the worst drummer? Okay, I got Greg's Ray Luzier. Yes, Kyle said Mike Portnoy was already mentioned, but I also really like Mike Mangini and Marco Miniman too. Mangini gets into some crazy polyrhythmic stuff. Yes, he does. And playing different time signatures with different limbs and whatnot boggles the mind. Yeah, absolutely. And then you said, I saw Ringo and his all-star band in person a handful of years ago. An absolute thrill to see him doing his thing. Greg said Ringo had the bankroll. And then Kirby says Ringo's timing is impeccable as well as his unique roles and simple approach. Yeah. So if you go back to the time when Ringo was in the Beatles, let's just do a quick little googly search. How old was Ringo when he was in the Beatles? Yes, Barry, I agree. Thomas Lang is the bomb. He is fantastic. Yes, and we could all go on and on and on, bringing these incredible drummers up. And you know, as great as all these drummers are, I bet if you asked them if they thought they were the greatest drummer in the world, they would say no. They would probably tell you no. So, okay, how old was Ringo when he joined the Beatles? He was 23 years old. Okay, so and you know the Beatles weren't actually a band for very long. So you know by the time the Beatles were over, he was what, early 30s, I think. Yeah. So think about the influence that a 23-year-old Ringo Starr had on the world of drummers that came along, and like Kirby saying, his simple approach. Well, his simple approach was appropriate because the songs weren't really that complicated to begin with. These guys were cutting edge rock stars. They were creating a new thing, and not long after the Beatles came on the scene, uh, so looks like 5 years later, that's when Led Zeppelin 1 came out, and then you have John Bonham, who's influencing all of these people. That came out in 1969, and think of the influence John Bonham has had across the world. And as great as John Bonham is and his feel, you still have these knuckleheads online that are saying, I could do that. Okay, you could. You weren't, you didn't, and you're not now. Like if you go and you look at their pages, nothing is happening with these people who are making these claims that they could do things bigger and better than John Bonham or Ringo Starr or Neil Peart. I just wanted to kind of talk about like what technology was like when these new things were happening and the influence that they had on the public at large and the inspiration they had to drummers to be just they were pioneers in what they were doing. They were trailblazers. So now, so you're talking about drummers that are like I said, between like the age of like 65 to 80 years old. A lot of their claims to who their influential drummer was, a lot of them will say Ringo Starr. Now let's go to people my age who are late 40s to, let's say, 60 years old. I was born in 72. So I was 5 years old when Kiss Alive came out. And when you ask drummers who are basically in that age bracket of 50 to 60 who their influential drummer was, they're going to most likely say Peter Criss from Kiss. Because when you open up the vinyl record from Kiss Alive 2 and see that huge picture of them on stage with all the fire and the ginormous drum riser and all the lighting, and then you heard the record, little kids are looking at that. They don't understand for sure what it is other than it looks exciting and they want to live inside that picture. And so they become fully committed to that, and they'll talk about how great Peter Criss is of a drummer. I'm not saying that Peter isn't, but the influence that Peter Criss had on people of my age. Just this huge, larger-than-life thing that was happening. Yes, Greg, I agree. Ringo's left foot, well, I don't know about deadly, but I know what you mean, being great. That's another thing that people get hung up on is what's known as the Bonham triplets. And the critics will come out and say, nope, he only did left starting triplets. Yes, in a lot of things he did. He also did right starting triplets. He did both. So these people want to fight about the most insignificant things. It's just nuts. So Peter Criss having a huge influence. So you got your Ringo Starrs, you've got your John Bonham, you've got uh, Peter Criss. Okay, Fred, but where is Buddy Rich in all this? I think Buddy Rich had the power because of well, maybe not because, but jazz being a heavy influence. Um, so jazz became super popular in the 20s, and the 20s are often referred to as the jazz era. Yes, Jeff Porcaro is amazing, Gary. I think he was probably the first one that I had mentioned. Uh, just an amazing drummer, Jeff Porcaro. Buddy Rich came onto the scene around 1939. I had to look this stuff up because I didn't know. So I wanted to speak somewhat intelligently today. Um, so, but what was the way to hear this kind of music? Well, one, radio was a very popular thing for people to have in their households and was extremely popular before the TV came out. So families would sit around the radio and listen to radio programs or listen to music together. It was entertainment. Um, there's not very often that we listen to music in the living room as a family. Mary might force feed Mariah Carey's "All I Want for Christmas" on Christmas morning, which I'm sure will happen again, as it does every year. But families aren't sitting around listening to the radio as entertainment. But when they did, jazz was one of those things that they really listened to, and so a lot of people got exposed to the crazy drumming of Buddy Rich. So people were hearing Buddy Rich on the radio, and then people would buy Buddy Rich records because Buddy Rich had his own band. And I don't know a lot of the history of Buddy Rich, um, so I'm not going to claim to know a lot. I'm not a big jazz guy. But that's probably an area of music that I would like to have a better education in knowledge of jazz music. Right now, it pretty much consists of some of my junior high and high school students who are in jazz band and need to work on certain things for jazz, but that's about the extent of it for me. So you have Buddy Rich being this huge influence. But then a lot of people will criticize Buddy Rich too. It's like it doesn't matter who you are or what you've accomplished or what kind of influence you had on people. There's always people on the other side of the fence that are going to say that guy is the worst at what they do. So in a lot of ways, when I title this "Who is the best and worst drummers in the world and why," sometimes these drummers share that title. They're the best and the worst depending on who you're talking to, what your matter of opinion is, and how they're influencing you. I have a lot of students that come in who sing the praises of Danny Carey from Tool, as they should. But that's their version of Neil Peart. Neil Peart. Neil. That's all I ever talked about when I was a teenager was Neil Peart. And I still talk about him. I'm 52 years old. I talk about Neil Peart. No. All the time. It's like, you have anything else to talk about? Let's talk more about Rush. But yes, so nowadays, Danny Carey kind of carries that torch, I believe, in the realm of prog rock, progressive rock. It's pretty cool. I was really starting to hit my stride, I think, as a drummer, and as much as I performed through the '90s, and of course that's when the Seattle scene really exploded, and I love those drummers, especially Sean Kinney from Alice in Chains, and he doesn't get mentioned hardly ever. But what a great drummer. What a great drummer. Dave Abbruzzese, who played for Pearl Jam, is one of my favorite. Yes, Gene Krupa as well. But I don't know for a fact, Greg, but I think that in some ways Gene sort of lived in Buddy's shadow. They were both incredible drummers, and I think, as far as I know, they were friends. But you've got this guy that's getting a lot of attention, and then there's Gene. Mark, Hard to pick best worst when it comes to art. Yeah, absolutely. Lately, I'm liking Scott Donaldson from King Buffalo and Jamie Staples from Wonder Horse, mostly for playing what the songs call for and not trying to squeeze too many hooks onto the canvas. Yeah, and again, Mark, I have no idea who those people are, and there's just so much music out there, and a lot of people doing great things in the circles in which they exist. Tim, Jeff Porcaro is my all-time favorite, followed closely by Michael DeRossi. Did I say that right? Probably not saying his last name right. From Heart. Yeah, Heart has a lot of great stuff out there. Gene Krupa was an animal, I agree. Max Roach. See, now these jazz guys are starting to float to the top. um, yeah, but I don't have a lot. They don't have a lot of influence on me, which does not make them the worst, but they're definitely huge, influential drummers nonetheless. Uh, let's see, where did I leave off? Da, 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 da. Lars Ulrich from Metallica. He is a guy that seems to be in a negative spotlight in the drumming world as of late. I really don't like people picking on Lars or Ringo, and their reasons for picking on see Bernard Purdy. Greg, are you Googling all these people, or are they just popping into your head? Bernard Purdy, of course, being credited with the Purdy Shuffle, which Jeff Porcaro also played, which John Bonham also played, which a gazillion drummers have played as a result of Bernard Purdy stretching the drums in a different direction. But Lars from Metallica, this was this rising force in the world of metal music, and kind of the king of the hill, so to speak, I think, in metal music. I remember being early teens and a bunch of my friends at school wearing Metallica shirts, and I didn't know who Metallica was. And, you know, they had their Master of Puppets shirt where, look, I can't remember, it was, you sort of saw hands and all these strings going down, all these crosses, I think, in like a cemetery kind of thing. I thought it looked dark and scary. But it was metal, you know? And who better to fit that role than Lars Ulrich? Nobody was better at that role, or is better at that role than Lars. And there's so many people making fun of Lars, and they're not really great drummers themselves. So I just, you know, you can't. There's no winning on social media sometimes with these things. I never claimed to be something so great out there. I just try to be the best me that I can, and I'm always working on how I can make Fred Fisher better, and how to make Fred Fisher a sought-after drummer. And, you know, I think I do have a certain skill set, but am I the best drummer in the world? No. Am I the worst drummer in the world? It depends on who my friends are. But so, you know, I have this YouTube channel, which has been pretty quiet for a while. This year's been just, as you guys know, it's been a mess of a year. I'm not blaming 2024. The year didn't, it's just circumstantial things. But I have all these drum covers on there that I've performed and played, and all of them by just trying to listen to what they did. And then I may have mentioned this before. I don't know if I mentioned it on my show, or maybe it was a post, but when I do a drum cover, I'm trying to emulate the drum part as best I can with how I'm hearing it. I don't go try to find drum charts, and I don't go looking on YouTube to see how some other drummer played it. I don't want that influence on me. I just want to interpret what I'm hearing the best I can, just like I always did when I was a kid growing up learning Rush songs. so I don't always hear things exactly correct, but I try to play appropriately for the song. And then, of course, I do a little bit of stick flips and twirls and things in there because that's just part of what I do. uh, uh, I've always been doing that kind of stuff. But then you'll have people that'll jump in there and they will say, that's not how the song goes. Well, let's see you do it. uh, the other part of it is when I do a drum cover and I'm listening, there might be all programmed drums, or it might be programmed drums with live drums, and then maybe it has percussion parts in it. And so I try to take all of those elements and create one drum part out of it, and then I'd play it and perform it. And of course, anytime you post a video of yourself playing your instrument online, you always run the risk of somebody criticizing it and tearing it apart. But so I guess we're brave to post post things like that. So I did all these drum covers, and a lot of people really liked it. I had other people say that they watched it because they wanted to learn how to play the song, so they kind of used the video as like a tutorial on how to play this song. And which, if that helps somebody, great. It wasn't until yesterday I had my first comment about, your playing is great. What's going on with your microphones? They're a mess. This sounds terrible. They were criticizing the sound. That's the first time anybody had criticized the actual audio quality of what they were watching and listening to. So I was like, you got to take those things with a grain of salt. You can't let that bug you. I just kind of laughed when I said it, and I said, well, I don't know what you're listening on, but thank you for your comment nonetheless. So there you go. So the worst drummer, or excuse me, the best drummer in the world, worst drummer in the world, can be one and the same. It's such a matter of opinion on all of this, and I'm sure all of us could just come up with long lists of drummers that we think are great and that have influenced us personally in some kind of way. Like I said, I was a late bloomer in this whole drumming thing as far as music goes, and so my drum teachers, my first big exposure to like a rock star was Mick Brown from Dokken, and I fell in love with Dokken, and then I fell more in love with George Lynch as a guitar player, and just thought he was awesome. I eventually met Wild Mick Brown when Midline was opening up some shows with Ted Nugent, and they did their sound check, and Mick was up there. I hadn't spoken to him yet, and he was dealing with some backline gear that was provided, so they weren't carrying their own drums. And they did their sound check, and when they were done, he remained up on the riser making adjustments and Bart and making adjustments and such. And I set up my drum kit, and Mick Brown was still behind me up on the riser working on things, and got all microphoned up, and I started doing the kick drum, and the kick drum just sounded like thunder in the venue. And Mick Brown yells from behind me. He goes, "Holy shit!" He goes, "That's what a kick drum's supposed to sound like." And he came hopping off the drum riser and ran right up next to me and wanted to know what I was doing to get that kick drum sound. And he kind of put his arm around me, and he's like, "Man," he goes, "I'm dealing with this crummy drum kit behind me." And I said, "Well, do you want to use this bass drum?" He's like, "No, man, it's fine." But and I said, "Just so you know, you're to blame for this whole situation I'm in." And I just told him really quick that I was a late bloomer in music, and my drum teacher exposed me to Doc, and I became a big Mick Brown fan at that point. And if you've ever met Mick Brown, he's just this ball of energy too, and just an exciting person to talk to. So that was my fun Mick Brown story. Let's see. I'm going to wrap this up here in a second. Yeah, James, go back to the start so I don't get myself in trouble with using the word worst. Joseph, Steve Gadd, yeah, been out there doing it for years and still gets the call from major artists. One of the influences along, sorry, this is jumping around, with Ringo and Buddy. Yes, I'm a little older, soon to be 70. So, Joseph, am I right? If you're soon to be 70, I'll ask you, did you see the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show? Was that like a pivotal moment for you, or even maybe a replay or rerun? Greg says critics can be widely weird. Usually they are projecting their own insecurities. Yeah, I agree with that. Of course, my buddy Bart is here. Jim, we were going to talk on the phone, and it never happened yet. Let me know when you want to talk. Be great just to catch up. And then James says, have been influenced by many drummers, but something about Steve Smith really got my attention. That's awesome. And James, did that get your attention with Journey, or was that before Journey, or I think when Steve Smith gets mentioned, I think we all probably immediately go to the Journey catalog. So I was just curious. Joseph, if you're still here, I'll wait a second, see if these answers to my questions come through. Okay, while we're waiting just for a moment, Jim says we will get to that. Thanks for checking in. Yeah, man. You and I need to have a phone hang for sure. Okay, Joseph says absolutely saw the original Ed Sullivan Show with the Beatles. That did it for me. Yeah, so okay. That's what I suspected. Most of those drummers out there who are kind of between, like, I think I said 65 and 80, that was such a big thing. That was such a big event just in general, having the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, and the impact and influence they had on these fantastic drummers that we all look up to. That was their moment, right? And then I mentioned like Led Zeppelin coming out, and then Kiss Alive 2, and seeing the inside with that stage, such a huge influence. And then Buddy Rich being kind of a pioneer as well. So lots of influence. Personality has a lot to do with what these drummers come up with to play, and who was influencing them to come up with drum parts. And they develop their own artistic license of what they're playing. And so they're the ones that came up with it. They're the ones that created this thing. They're the ones that recorded it. They're the ones that played it live. And so I think it's really unfair of some of these critics out there to say, I could have come up with that. Are you sure? Are you sure you could have come up with that? Or are you just saying that because it already exists and you're thinking that you could have improved on that in some way? I don't know. Those people can enjoy their dishwasher jobs. Or their landscaping jobs. I really know what that's like. That's a miserable place to be. Evolution album then with Jean-Luc Ponty. I don't know who that is. See, James, you have this vast knowledge of the who's of drummers and music, which my knowledge, James Harrison's knowledge. I can't even get it all in the picture. Igmatic Ocean is one of the best drumming performances by Steve Smith. Okay, James, I'm going to have to go back and write this stuff. I'm going to write it down right now, because I'm sitting here with pen and I thought, there's my pen. Some new music, or probably old music for me to digest, but music for me to check out anyway. We're doing it live. We're doing it live, people. I'm going to check it out, Mr. Harrison. Jean. If I don't write it down right now, I won't do it later. That's why it's happening right now. Steve Smith. So there you have it, folks. I'm not picking on who I think is the worst drummer. Sandwich artists, critics are usually sandwich artists. Oh, do they work at Subway? Oh, here's another thing. I never really know what to think exactly when I receive these things. Speaking of people's opinions of what's the best out there, there's this thing floating around Facebook right now. I think it's called Community Votes, and Fred Rock School of Drumming was nominated as one of the top music schools in the area. You know, of course, mine is focused on drumming, and I recognized a couple other names in there, but uh, somehow I got nominated, and now all the nominations are in, and I guess voting begins tomorrow. So now you'll probably start seeing this community votes for Boise, and it's not just music; it's like restaurants and car mechanics, and you name it, like wherever people are reviewing businesses. So Fred Rock School of Drumming was high on the nominations of best music school in Boise, which was really cool. But I never really know I'm just trying to do the best I can, and be a great influence on other drummers. And then yesterday in the mail, I've got this Boise Best of 2024 congratulating me, Fred Rock School of Drumming. So this is a different one. Thank you, James. This came in the mail, and I took a screenshot of who else was in this list. Joe Cephalo, I think I'm saying his last name correctly, guitar player here in town, for teaching music lessons, guitar lessons. Who else is on this list? At Home Piano and Voice, Passionate Music Studio, Idaho Music Professionals, some other people that I'm not aware of, because maybe they teach piano lessons or voice or something like that. Top music instructors in Boise, Idaho. So Fred Rock School of Drumming was included in that. So I got this thing in the mail, and so then I had to check it out. Like, is this legitimate? And it's backed by the Better Business Bureau, so I guess it must be. So anyway, that was cool to get in the mail. There you go. Fun stuff. I never really know what to think of that. Like, is this? I'm not. It's just fun to have those little pats on the back, I guess you could say. Guys, thanks for hanging out with me. James said Todd Zuckerman did a great breakdown of Steve Smith on that album. I'll have to check that out as well. Mary, I'm not doing anything else today except listen to suggestions from James Harrison, okay? Just, she's in the producer's in the producer chair, and she can't she's not even watching me. She doesn't care what's happening in this room. She says she has work to do. Well, I'm just letting you know, my work to do today is listening to some stuff that James Harrison says that I need to listen to. Did you say I have 4 minutes to do that? She said I had 4 months. Well, he just now told me. Yeah. Want to fight? Want to fight? All right, you guys. Thanks for hanging out. Yes, thank you, Greg, James. Thank you, Kirby. There you go. It's just all a matter of opinion. That's all it is. Just a matter of opinion. And leave Ringo alone. Leave Lars alone, people. Not you people that are watching. Those other people. Okay, I'm going to end this. And I always like to put in a good word for my friends at Drummers Education Connection. That show happens at 11 a.m. on Tuesdays, Pacific time. Drummers Education Connection, all one word, here on Facebook and YouTube and on Spotify. And I also saw that Onyx Microphones is also a new sponsor for the show. Good stuff, and I've become really great friends with those guys. So I like promoting my friends. Thank you, Serena. And Gary, we got to get together soon. I know we say that every week. Okay, guys, have an awesome day, and I will see you next week. Bye.